For the longest time, people have been thinking that when you talk of inheritance, this is a topic for the rich and the old. But I want to tell you this plainly that you actually need to constantly think about the end from the beginning, if at all you are futuristic, because there's no point of you accumulating a lot of assets and you don't have the final plan for you, for the sake of your children and the grandchildren. Sometimes it becomes very, very difficult, uh, especially when people or children of the family have been left with things, but there was nothing that was left possibly to guide them. And we have seen this a lot with even the wealthiest of the family. If at all you do not speak, sometimes you create a lot of confusion when you go silent. And we understand that where there is confusion, there is also a conflict, because no one understands where they actually stand. So my main reason for bringing in this topic is to help you and your family to avoid a lot of these unnecessary costs and undue delays. When you possibly go silent, you can get sick. We have seen that where, yes, you need to access this fund, but because you cannot speak, no one in your family can be able to access any of this money to even help you. And I was giving you a story of one of my relative who got electrocuted, and unfortunately he could not speak, and the bank was insisting that the family members must take him to the bank for verification. You can imagine. And the family was trying to actually explain to the manager that our guy cannot speak, is fully bandaged, but the manager was insisting that they make arrangement with the hospital to make sure that the bank holder is brought to the bank. You can imagine. So this is why it is very important, even as you accumulate these assets. Think of, if tomorrow you woke up and you're not able to speak, what would happen to your assets? Yeah. And one thing about a trust fund is not for the rich. I want to put it very, very plainly. One of the key benefit that you get out of setting up a trust is you are able to avoid the probate or the court cases, court process rather. You are able to save massively in legal fees when there is dispute, and thirdly, you are able to save on what we call tax, because the moment you're transferring your assets while you're still alive, you would incur what we call a stamp duty. And finally, and the most important, is your property does not get publicized. Yeah, when we are talking about succession, the family goes to the court. They will, everyone will know what you owned and possibly the other families you have, because they always crop up. And that really, really happens, especially when we talk about money as a subject. That is why I'm insisting that you really need to think about trust. It doesn't matter the age you are in. And in fact, by age 20, 25, you're supposed to be thinking of the end from the beginning. And I wanted us to look at how do you actually transfer these assets from your individual name so that you can actually protect them against messy divorces, against debts, or what do we call them? These people come to collect money from you, or you could be owing someone. If you had transferred that asset to your trust, you are able to save all your assets from those people. And it is not as complicated as majority of you might be thinking. Look at this. If you want to sell a piece of land, does it really become complicated? It's the same process. By the way, the documentation we need are almost very similar, only that in this case, you are transferring your assets from you to you. Yeah, because when you are a settler, you still own these assets, and you can do anything with them when you are still alive. Look, if you have ever bought a piece of land, you know what or where we start. What is required is your ID, your KRA PIN, you might require a passport and a transfer agreement and of how much you are selling this piece of land for. And the same thing is required for the buyer. They require a KRA PIN, they need ID, they need passport, and the copy of agreement. And again, now when we talk of trust, it's like because we are not involving a real buyer, we are transferring. What we possibly need is a signed trust deed. That trust deed actually contains the following. You have the rules. You have said that in case I'm not there, this is how my asset should be treated. And the people hearing, the beneficiary, should actually enjoy the benefits of this particular asset to this extent. And once a beneficiary hits a certain age, they should exit and introduce their maybe a child by way of birth certificate so that they can take over. So that is what the advocate actually requires. Number one, a signed a trust deed. Secondly, we also need the KRA pin for the trust, because trust is a separate entity with all powers of an individual. It can sue you, it can own things, yeah. So those are the two documents, and then from there we start the official transfer process, where we are required to go to the Ministry of Land. You are supposed to do official search for that piece of land to ascertain that doesn't have some areas. Some pieces of land, they require you to pay annual rates, land rents. Yeah, and once the search is done, the advocate now drafts an agreement to transfer this asset. But before we transfer, we need to do what we call evaluation, and the evaluation is done by a different party, which may cost you some small amount. And once that is certified, the advocate is required to arrange for how the land board will be attended, so that if the piece of land had some interested parties, they give consent to the transfer of this particular asset. Once we go to the land board, and then we start now, we initiate the process to the land registry to transfer, to change the names, quote unquote. It's like we've bought. It's like the trust fund has actually bought this piece of land. And once the land registry completes the process of transfer, the name is changed. And then from that point, we notify it is a body that oversees trusts, to let them know that now this piece of land is under the management of the trustee of, let's say, Elijah Mwai Trust Fund. Okay. And that is the process. When you talk of shares, when you talk of assets that gives us interest, like money market funds, special funds, government securities, for them, they are a little bit easier to convert, unlike those of land. Yeah. So each day we shall be doing something small, so that you can be able to chew and make it easy for us to actually understand. So see you guys in the next episode. If you have a question, feel free to engage me. If you want to get a quotation of how much we would need to transfer your assets, just put the word quotation. I can also share my mobile number, which is 0719 265 That is 0719 265 155. So feel free to engage me for quotations and how you can be able now to set up the trust fund.